My name is Gurpreet and welcome to my YouTube channel Junction. In the last class we have discussed about the observations regarding Mendel's experiment. In this class we will discuss or we will study about the interpretation of the experiments which was conducted by Mendel on garden pea, Pisum sativum, based on his observation. So this is our lecture number 3, guys, and for a quick revision, we have seen in the last class that Mendel hybridized the true breeding tall pea plants with true breeding dwarf pea plants, and he got all plants with tall character in F1 generation. Okay, Mendel referred this type of cross as monohybrid cross, and this is the result of monohybrid cross. After selfing in this hybrid the tall pea plants, he got both tall pea plants and dwarf pea plants in F2 generation in 3:1 ratio. These 3 tall pea plants, after selfing in these 3 tall pea plants, 1/3 plants had produced tall pea plants only, and 2/3 plants had produced tall and dwarf plants. And dwarf plants from F2 generation would always produce dwarf plants in F3 generation. So from this observation, we can modify 3:1 ratio as 1:2:1 ratio. So this we have studied in the last class. So from these observations, Mendel derived some interpretation. These interpretations of Mendel has referred as principles of inheritance. Okay, so the first principle of inheritance, or the first interpretation that Mendel derived from these observations, is the principle of dominance. Okay, so what he observed that only one of the parental trait, which is tall, had appeared in F1 generation. The other trait, which is dwarf, did not appear in F1 generation, but the trait which did not appear in F1 generation has appeared in F2 generation. Same as parental form. Okay, so this observation clearly rejected the blending hypothesis or mixing hypothesis. Okay, which suggests that form of trait blend or mix after crossing. If the form of trait would mix after crossing, then after mixing we cannot get the other trait, which is dwarf, in F2 generation. So based on this observation, he concluded that unit of inheritance should be discrete or particulate. Only in case of discrete or particulate unit of inheritance we can get the both form of trait in F2 generation. Okay, so dominant. Okay. So this is the law of dominance. So other interpretation which was derived by Mendel in the form of principle of inheritance was principle of segregation. Okay. In this principle, he explained the appearance of both forms of trait in F2 generation in 1:2:1 ratio with the following arguments. So what are the arguments which was represented by Mendel in explaining this? So the first argument was that pea plant has two factors for each form of trait. If the two factors are identical, the pea plant is called pure, otherwise impure. Okay. Second argument was that pea plants gets each factor, or we can say pea plant gets one factor from male gamete and other factor from female gamete. Both gametes fuse to form zygote. The third argument was that gamete has only one factor for each form of trait. So it is pure. Okay. His fourth argument was that both factors occur in equal frequencies condition of factors is restored due to random fusion of gametes. So these arguments are sufficient in explaining the appearance of both forms of trait in F2 generation. So by a diagrammatic representation, we understand what these arguments say. Okay. If we take an example of hybridization, then we can write phenotype. We will discuss what a phenotype is or what a genotype is. For time being, please consider this what I am writing. Okay, so phenotype like tall and dwarf. This is parental form. Okay, genotype like this tall is a true breeding, so we can write TT for tall and small t for dwarf. Okay, after crossing this or so this tall plant is hybridized with dwarf plant. First it will form gametes. So this is pure form. So this will only produce one gamete, which is T. Gamete has only one factor for each form of trait, and this will also form T, small t. These are gametes. After hybridization or after fusion of gametes, we obtain capital T and small t in F1 generation. Okay? So, if we draw a Punnett square for this F1 generation, or we self-fertilize the product The first letter of the form of trade in capital is represented as dominant allele. Okay, or how the recessive allele is represented? The first letter recessive allele. The first letter of dominant The genotype is the genetic constitution of an organism is called its genotype. Okay, and what a phenotype is? Phenotype, observable characters of an organism is called its phenotype. Okay. So, the phenotype, there is an equation of phenotype which state that phenotype is equal to genotype plus environment. So, genotype is the intrinsic factor. So, why we can say that phenotype is equals to genotype and environment? Why not phenotype equals to genotype? Why environment is included in this? So, we can take an example of a seed which has all the potential to grow into a good seedling. So, it has the genotype to grow into a good seedling, but what if we cannot provide the proper external factors like soil, water or light? Would it be able to germinate? No. Okay.